Worse transgression than this? That's why they do it. Because it feels empowering. It releases energy. They do it because they believe that when you do this, it releases divine energy. And when you actually do it, okay? Guys, I'm not telling you to go do this, okay? Please do not do this, okay? And please remember, okay? This is evil. We should not be doing this. But when you actually go and do it, those who can do it, they feel as though they are now inundated, that now they are now filled with divine energy. They found the secret of the universe. They found the ultimate power in the world. Another transgression, which is not as bad, but pretty bad, is the idea of incest, right? And there are secret societies out there, guys, that do this. And you know what, guys? I hate to tell you this, okay? But they do it in public in front of everyone else, because that creates both group unity, synchronicity, and it releases in their minds divine energy. They have now access to God. Sparta. Sparta is one of the most famous military societies in world history. Sparta is a city-state in ancient Greece. And you may have heard of Sparta. A movie about Sparta was made called 300. I'm not sure if you guys have seen the movie 300. But 300 is really about 300 Spartan soldiers who are fighting millions, not millions, but hundreds of thousands of Persian soldiers. Persia is invading mainland Greece. They fight at a place called Thermopylae, the Battle of Thermopylae. And this is a pass into mainland Greece. The Greeks have to hold this position if they are to prevent the invasion. Okay? 300 Spartan soldiers, backed by thousands of other Greek soldiers, make a last stand in this pass. They are overwhelmed by the Persian invasion, and rather than run like most people, the 300 soldiers make a final stand. Their leader is Leonidas, and he tells them, "We will fight to the death." They all fight to the death, and they're all massacred. And the Persians take Leonidas' head, cut it off, and put it on a pike to warn the Greeks, "We are merciless." Eventually, the Greeks, inspired by the sacrifice of Leonidas, they will repel the invasion and destroy the invaders. So how do we get this culture? Okay? Well, the education system of the Spartans is really interesting. It's really disturbing, actually. So young boys at age 5 and 6, they're taken away from their homes. And they are put in a school run by older boys. Okay, so the older boys are maybe like 10, 11. And so what happens, as you can imagine, is the older boys beat the crap out of the younger boys. Okay? From day one, there's no education. They're not learning anything. All that's happening is the older boys are just beating the crap out of the younger boys. But because this is happening, we call this like hazing, okay? And this happens actually a lot among fraternities and sports teams. When they're getting the crap beaten out of them, it builds solidarity. It builds brotherhood. So these young boys who are 5 and 6, they learn to love each other, because only by helping each other can they survive the brutality. Okay? Then what happens is when they become 11, 12, 13, when they hit puberty, this is really interesting, they become mentored. Okay? Mentored by an older soldier, an older Spartan soldier who's maybe 28, 29, 30. But he has a family. They become lovers. They have sex with each other. And this builds group solidarity. Okay? So during hazing phase, these young boys learn to trust each other. They learn how to bond with each other. During the mentorship phase, these young boys learn to think like in a hive mind, okay? They learn to be part of a larger group. Then when they turn 18, they graduate, okay? And in order to graduate, what they do is this. They have a mission. So the Spartans have slaves called helots, okay? These are just people that they've conquered and who are now work as slaves in the fields for them, okay? They're like serfs. So there are lots of rules governing the helots. An important rule is curfew. So if it's dark at night, you cannot be outside the house. If you are outside the house at night, you could be executed, okay? So as a graduation mission, these young soldiers hide in the fields at night. Okay? They hide in the fields and they wait for the sun to go down. So it's now dark. And they look for helots to come back because they're late. And what they'll do is they'll sneak up behind the helots and cut their throats. Okay? This is basically sacrifice. Okay? Human sacrifice. So the Spartans did this as well. It's a very common thing. And what this does is it builds group cohesion, leading to synchronicity. There are thousands of city-states in Greece. Only Sparta did this. And it made everyone think Sparta was disgusting. Everyone hated Sparta. But it kept Sparta unified. And it made Sparta into the dominant military power in Greece at that time. Okay? What happened then is Thebes, another city-state in Greece, they would copy the Spartan system, okay? But they made it voluntary. So in Sparta, you had to be an elite to be part of the system. But in Thebes, anyone could join the system, okay? And they call the system the Sacred Band. Of 300 soldiers. And they were, again, lovers, okay? But this is really important for you guys to understand. At this time in history, there's no concept of homosexuality. It was perfectly permissible. No one cared if you had sex with men or animals or whatever, okay? It was not a big deal. This comes much later in modern times. Back then, homosexuality was not considered a concept. Okay? If you're out in the field, if you're out at war for like years and years and there's no woman around, you're gonna have sex with other men. It's a very natural thing to do. Okay? It doesn't mean you're homosexual, okay? So the Sacred Band of Thebes became the dominant military power after Sparta. Okay? It's called the Sacred Band. And they were like the vanguard. They were the spearhead. They would be the first in battle. And they were so ferocious that their enemies would run away. Okay? Then what happened is that Macedonia would copy the Theban system. Who is the most famous Macedonian in the world? Do you guys know? Which Macedonian is the most famous ever in human history? You know the name, but you may not know he's Macedonian. Alexander the Great, okay? His father is Philip II. Philip II is the one who actually built the greatest army in the world, the Macedonian army. And it was Alexander the Great, his son, who would take this army and conquer Persia. Okay, we'll learn this later on. But Philip II learned all this from Thebes. And at first, Macedonia and Thebes were allies, but Philip II was very ambitious. So then he wanted to conquer all of mainland Greece. And in 338 BCE, at the Battle of Trachonia, Macedonia fought against the combined might of Thebes and Athens. And Macedonia destroyed Thebes and Athens, okay? Because Macedonia basically copied the system from Sparta and Thebes. At this point, Macedonia should have destroyed the entire Theban and Athenian army. But when all was lost, the Sacred Band, they stood in the middle of the field and they blocked the advance of Macedonian charge so that everyone could escape back into the cities. They did not fear death. They welcomed death. Okay? For them, what mattered was honor and sacrifice. And that's how you create the greatest army in the world. Okay? Does that make sense? So these historical analogies give credence to our thought experiment. Okay, now we're going to look at a question, which is, okay, why does the system work? Okay, so let's do game theory. Game theory. Game theory is just a study of how to win games, okay? It's a very general thing. So let's do a thought experiment and just say there's about 1 million people in the world, okay? There's 1 million people in the world, and they're all trying to win the game against each other, but only one can win. Well, according to game theory, the best way to win a game is by, does anyone know? Cheating, okay? Cheating. If you follow the rules, you will never win the game, you have to cheat. And in this game, the best way to win is by coordinating with other people, right? Because everyone's playing by himself. So if you can work with other people, then that gives you a huge advantage over everyone else, right? The problem with this is the moment that people start coordinating, it forces an arms race of coordination. So maybe these two are working together. These 4 now are forced to work together, which now forces these 5 to work together, okay? So if you are the first to work together, you get screwed in the process. So if you cheat, you have to cheat secretly, okay? You have to coordinate without people knowing you're actually coordinating together. You have to conspire secretly, okay? And there are different ways to collaborate secretly, okay? So let's look at examples. So family is one example, right? Of coordination, synchronicity. Another example is religion. If you have a leader, right? If you have a similar race, ethnicity, you have a similar language. Okay, so these are examples of how you get people to coordinate together. The problem is that these are all obvious to people, which forces them to do the same thing, okay? But there's a strategy that you can use that allows you to coordinate secretly and defeat all your enemies. And this strategy is called transgression. Transgression. The breaking of taboos, the breaking of social norms, the breaking of social laws. Transgression. Okay, so let's study this concept. All right, so the idea is that, the theory is that the greater you transgress, okay? This is the level of transgression. The greater your cohesion, which leads to synchronicity. Okay, that's a theory I want to propose to you. All right? So, transgression, I mean, it's a very simple idea. You're breaking the rules, right? You're cheating. And therefore, everyone wants to put you in prison. Which means that the only way that you can survive is if you keep the secret among your group, right? Which forces cohesion. Does that make sense? Right? And we see this in all aspects of society, right? So the most basic form of transgression is just joking or pranking, right? So for example, you guys, 6 of you, decide, you know what, we're gonna play a joke on the school. We're going to cover all the rooms with toilet paper. It's a joke, it's a prank. But obviously, you don't want to get caught because the school will punish you. And this joke and this prank will make you more cohesive, right? Because now you have a secret amongst yourself. And if anyone betrays you, you're all screwed. Right? Does that make sense? That's the logic. The other thing that's really interesting is that when you transgress, when you break a taboo, you feel empowered. You feel liberated. And it becomes addictive. Right? You fill the school with toilet paper. You're like, that was a lot of fun. Why was it fun? Because you broke the rules. You feel, I'm more powerful than my teacher. So you keep on doing more and more of this stuff. right? Then you may be like, hey, let's go to the store and steal a candy. That candy may cost $1, nothing, right? But you try it and you are terrified. You're seized by doubt. You're seized by fear. Sorry, so this is the sound that tells us that we should go on break, but again, we don't go on break in this class, okay? So I apologize. We're not taking a break. We keep on going, okay? But that's what the sound is. Okay, so you're terrified because your mother, your teachers, everyone told you stealing is bad, right? But when you actually go and do it, how do you feel? You feel energized. You feel liberated. You feel empowered. And if your friends are with you, the friendship becomes much more unified, much more cohesive, much more synchronized. Does that make sense? And now you want to learn, let's break more rules. Let's see what happens if we break more and more rules. And you keep on going because it's addictive. And ultimately, there's a transgression that is the ultimate taboo, which is what? You guys know? Yeah, right? This. Right? Can you think of a more worse transgression than this? That's why we do this. So the question for us is, why is it that this happens? Why do the Aztecs do it? Why do the Phoenicians do it? Why do the Romans do it? And why is it today the Israelis do it in Gaza? And remember, okay, what the Israelis are doing is quite horrific because it is really this sort of sacrifice. Why? Because 47%, almost half of the population of Gaza is under 18 years old. So the majority of people who are getting killed are in fact children. What is most striking or blatant about what's happening in Gaza is that we can all see it for ourselves. And it's almost as though the Israelis want us to see it and want us to hate them. Right? You can see all over the world, popular opinion is turning against Israel. You have these popular protests all around the world protesting what is happening in Palestine. If they really want to do this, right, there are actually much more effective ways of doing this. For example, you could just poison their water. Or you could poison the air so that everyone in Gaza gets a fast cancer, right? We have the technology to do this. So Israel could do it this secretly and no one would talk about it. And in 20 years' time, 30 years' time, the population of Gaza would all be gone. It would be a very secret, right? Instead, they choose to do this in front of the world. And my argument to you is that this is intentional. They want the world to hate them. Because by doing this, they create the ultimate taboo, right? We find this disgusting and contemptuous, so the entire world will unite against Israel. But guess what? That's what their religion wants. In the extreme form of Jewish eschatology, or the religion, they believe that at the end of the world, Israel will fight the entire world and God will help Israel triumph in the end. So what's really happening in Gaza is that there are extremists within the Israel government who want to accelerate the process of the end of the world, where Israel will face the world. And if you think about it, the entire idea of this ritual sacrifice is to unite the Israeli population. And what's extremely disturbing and horrifying about it is that this works.